Hey everybody, Ranchin here, bringing you all another StarCraft commentary, and I have none other but Kenny alongside me. Kenny, say something.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Ranchin invited me along to do some commentaries today, and of course I couldn't pass up the opportunity as Ranchin's a fellow commentator on SC2GG, of course, and a very good on-E friend of mine, and it should be a really interesting game. We're watching 815 versus Bisu, and I expect a pretty interesting game, especially since it's Andromeda, and that can produce some really late game crazy matches, I gotta say. But Bisu is the man, and he is the Zerg Slayer, so let's see how 815 holds up against KennyCasting.
Right, we're going to have 815 in blue as of the Zerg, of course, at the lower right hand. At the upper right, we're going to have Bisu in yellow as the protoss. And it's going to be a very interesting match, in my opinion. 815 known and lauded for his very impressive macro play. If he goes further in the late game, if he manages to get into that late mid game where you really get defiler tech going and get a bunch of hatcheries everywhere expanding all over the place, then Bisu could be in a little bit of trouble. But, of course, Bisu is known as a player who prevents that game. Sometimes he gets in a little bit of trouble in the late game, but he's very good at preventing that. He's very good at going around harassing. That's his style of play, and I think that if he prevents 815 from playing and going up to macro, and if 815 can't stop Bisu from harassing him, Bisu should be able to take this game very comfortably. So it's all going to come down to what builds and such. 815 apparently going for an overpool, so he's playing a fairly safe build. He probably knows the Bisu's close by, so he's, just in case Bisu decides to do something funky, he's going to see whether he attempts to pop some Zerglings going and try for a run by, although I think that's going to be pretty dangerous because Bisu is, of course, going for the Forge Fast Expand that is so famous for. So, Kenny, what do you think 815 should do here to try to steal this from Bisu?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different things that you can do in this situation. It's quite common, obviously, for protoss to go early expansion. One thing that he is doing is he's going overpool, which will force Bisu to have to make cannons before his Nexus, most likely, depending on how fast he wants to get the Zerglings out. And by the way he's saving up larvae, I expect he's going to go ahead and pop those out. So that's going to make Bisu have to put down cannons and further delay the macro of Bisu. And that's just, the more he can do that, the better. And as you can see, Bisu already being forced to have to put up 2 cannons because he did see that he overpooled, and he doesn't want to take the risk because 6 Zerglings is greater than 1 cannon, regardless of what anyone will say. That is true. Unless you're running them around in circles and you're not actually attacking the cannon. But one thing to mention is that there's the diversion in build can be so huge around the I like to call it about the 4 to 7 minute mark is really when you can do some crazy stuff. And I think that right now there's a couple different things that 815 can do. I think the more standard thing he's going to do is probably something like a 3-hatch into 5-hatch Hydra, which is just really, really good for this map. It's got a lot of free space to run around in, a lot of room to flank. It caters to that, as well as it caters to getting range and killing the Forge and Gateway early. So I have to say, if he were to go one strategy over the other, it would definitely be the common 5-hatch Hydra that we see so often. And you're already seeing that 3rd hatch going up right now, so I'd expect that he's going to move into something like that.
So yeah, what looks like to be a more macro-based build from 815, going for early aggression to force Bisu to put those cannons down, as mentioned. He's also now getting a probe scout out there, going to spot those Zerglings as they run in. He is putting down his gateway, of course, at the front, so he's going to have some Zealots to help block that. Also getting now his Cybernetics core, so he's probably just going to transition into regular Stargate from there and get some Corsairs out there. Probe Scout might actually run by here. Zerglings quite a lot behind, so he might actually get those by. I'm going to see whether 815 has any more Zerglings inside of his base to prevent the Scout. Also getting his lair now going, so this could indeed, we're going to see whether he puts down his Spire to get Scourge and then just goes into 5-hatch Hydra as is the usual and go for a break. We're going to see what Bisu managed to do. He's still running around with that 1 probe around. And Bisu has also, of course, gotten his gas going, so it's just more very standard so far. Not too much deviation, but it's all going to come down to what he building 815 puts down after that lair comes up, because the lair is pretty standard. And now Bisu's probe just running around, desperate trying to get a scout going, but he's just not going to be allowed. He's going to have to wait for that one Corsair. I don't quite see the Stargate going up quite yet. Also getting his second gas and has a Zealot out, so a Rumba is going to be just a little bit more difficult now by 815 as soon as he has some ground as soon as Bisu, that is, has some ground forces going. Lair almost up, so it's just going to be very critical to see. Bisu should not be able to get that scout in. 815 prevents the scout as long as possible. It's very important for him because Bisu is very good at getting that scout. Also now moving downwards with that Zealot, possibly to help him get the scouting information he needs. Instantly pulls back as soon as he sees the number of Zerglings. Their Stargate now almost up, and this OV is going to be in trouble and probably get taken down, whether it's going to be the Dragoon or the Corsair that does it. So we're going to see very soon what it is that 815 goes for, and I think that's going to pretty much show us how the next 10 minutes of this game are going to go on. Oh, that Overlord barely manages to survive. Man, oh man.
Yeah. One thing to mention is that Bisu is really, in this matchup, it's always a gas-intensive matchup, and like you said, he got the second gas going, so Bisu is going to move into that Corsair, probably, he's probably going to throw down either a Citadel or a robotics facility. My guess would be his famous, of course, Citadel into Templar Archives. That's, of course, standard play again, guys. And really, this is just going to come down to, as you can see, there we have the Citadel already down. This is just going to come down to really just standard play. And I think that Bisu, of course, is the more known and more seasoned player. So he's ready for anything that these smaller guys throw at him. I mean, not to say 815 isn't a magnificent player. He's really actually an up-and-coming Zerg who's quite an amazing Zerg player. But Bisu is just so good at this matchup and reading what is going on, and this is what all he really needs is this Corsair to see what he wants to see, and he's so good at setting up against that. I think this is just going to come down to who has just the more solid gameplay, and I'm not going to count 815 out of this, but I got to say Bisu, as we all know, just being such a strong player, it's going to be very difficult for 815 to fight against a player of this caliber in a just normal one-on-one matchup. I would expect maybe for him to try something a little bit different, but it does look like he is going for another expansion, so he's trying to take kind of, I guess, a good economic advantage, although really it all is going to come down to when Bisu moves out, that one attack where Bisu moves out and who wins that battle, because that usually seems what it is, or seems what it comes down to against this level of play. Sometimes it just really depends on what timing in the game the attack comes out, and there we see a DT as well. So it looks like Bisu is doing some Corsair DT action. If he can sneak some DTs up into the base, that would be really, really devastating. I really don't know, though, if that's going to happen, as there's a Sunken and a few Overlords in the front, so probably going to try to snipe that expansion that went down in the bottom left-hand corner.
Yeah, we're going to see what Bisu tries to go. He is apparently going for that. I'm not quite sure if their OVs down there are moving into position, and yeah, it's the commentator is fixing something there for us to help out. DT's standing in place, probably just waiting for the particular timing, but now 815 is moving Zerg.